Hi, Black Circle family. Thank you for coming back for another episode. I'm so glad that you could join us today. And I'm so glad that Chidi Nwaubani can join us today. Chidi from Looty Art. Looty Art. And we're going to get into all of that. But your resume is super impressive. I was doing some research and it was DJ and keen traveler and public speaker and, of course, digital entrepreneur. But what I like to do with my guests is I kind of like to lead with the journey and what brought them there. So where does that all start for you? And where did it lead you to?
I guess in terms of creativity and always when I was young, always had energy. Yeah. And I feel like my mom tried to control that energy by just saying, go and draw.
Yep.
She always used to be if I was doing too much or being a nuisance or whatever, she would be just take this and draw. Use that to kind of get out that energy that you had. And I think that just kind of started the process for me of just always using this kind of energy that I had to create something. So throughout my life, I've always been making something, creating something, whether it's DJing or doing music or actually creating. I used to have a fashion brand. I know how to sew.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
How did that come about?
So before, me and my friend, we actually used to sell. We had a market store.
Mm-hmm.
We used to sell hats and stuff like that. Then another one of my friends had a brand already set up, and he was like, "Yo, why don't we get together and do create a brand? You've already got this experience already." I'd worked for a music and fashion magazine before, so had a few links there. Created it, and it blew up. It was at the time anyway, it was one of the biggest streetwear brands. The moment we had a store in Shoreditch, Box Park. Before the Box Park was the Box Park, what it was, what we know today. It was, there was a lot of cool underground brands and stuff there. So we were there, and it was a crazy experience to have that early experience to create something, have a business and everything. And then that then led me into working in fashion, and then worked at Burberry for 3 years. But I was in fashion, but on the tech side as well.
Mm-hmm. So when you say fashion on the tech side, how did the two marry together?
Yeah, I worked on the app team. So I worked with building the app, and then some of the digital strategies that they had in store as well. But it was all using that experience that I had of owning an e-commerce brand and a physical. We had a physical store, but it was a digital e-commerce brand.
Amazing. Lots of things going on there.
Yeah, I think
young age.
Sometimes when I think it's sometimes I think there's too much, and I don't know what to call myself. Would you say it's an artist, entrepreneur, founder, designer? So that just creative.
Yeah, I didn't creative. I think you're creative, but you encapsulate all of them. Reading through everything that you've done, and everything that's probably still to come from you. I think you can definitely encapsulate all of the above. Tick all of the above.
Yeah. Do you believe in jack of all trades?
Yeah.
But jack of all trades, master of
none.
Do you believe in that, or do you believe you can be a jack of all trades? You can actually, if you want to be a musician and also a investment banker and a chef.
Interesting. I think you need to find out what is your purpose and your passion. And I think you lead with that. Everything else can be a hobby. It can be, I don't think you can be all of those things can be your passions and your purpose. I think there's only one path for that, but you can certainly have hobbies and things that keeps your mind engaged. But I don't know.
It's because you see people, there's loads of great examples of this, but I think some of them, they're similar. So for example, we have a lot of the people from the grime scene now, the actors. You saw from Kano, what he's doing, and he's now, well, he's an actor now, really in the game. But it's I haven't really seen many people that do something maybe they're a musician and then they're doing something completely different.
They diversify.
Into something else. But you can always make those leaps when there's something similar. And I think that's what I've done, is that everything that I do is like, there's similarities to it. It's all creative.
Exactly. You're not just going out there saying, right, I'm creative, but actually I want to go and, I don't know, do something. I want to be a surfer.
Something
champion surfer.
Exactly, something completely different. I think everything kind of links in, and I've allowed it to like link in at the same time.
I love that. So I guess, what were some of your influences, and do you have a piece of art or a creation that's kind of left a strong impression on you?
Creation has left a strong. I mean, there's one piece. There's this one piece I have in my place, and it's a map of Africa, but the map is upside down, and it shows Africa as if it was never colonized. So it actually, like, it's like it's an art piece, but it's also like a very educational piece at the same time. So it's upside down, and then it's got all the countries but their original name. It's even got Africa's original name, which was Aleko-Bulan, I think. Aleko-Bulan, that's the name of the piece as well. And it's very poetic. Like, it's upside down because the artist said that, who's to say that Africa is not the other way and the north is the south? It's just, when you're the conqueror, you get to tell the story, you get to position your country above. So kind of signifying that you're above them and that these guys are below. You get to show like how the size of it, which the actual size of on the maps, Africa's the biggest landmass.
Yeah.
But when you look on the map, it's like
they squashed it.
Small. It's smaller. So there's a lot of things that go into it, into this piece, and it's very like more than just looking at and seeing like, oh, this was originally like this is actually originally the Ashanti Kingdom, and Ghana's not actually really Ghana, and you see all those things.
Because before that, there was no borders. It was all kingdoms. It wasn't as it existed.
It's like the notion of like nation that we have now was very much different,
right,
to what existed. So yeah, there were borders, but not really the same as what we have today. It wasn't like borders in terms of you need a visa to like pass here and those.
Exactly. It's annoying. And is there any contemporary artists that you would say, okay, yeah, I really like their work, or anybody that stood out for you, or even in kind of the space that exists now, any kind of Black artists that you would want people to say, right, yeah, go and check this person out?
I mean, in terms of like actual artists, is Prince.
Right.
Prince Yassi, he's an amazing photographer. Like, you wouldn't believe it, but the majority of his best pieces were shot on the iPhone. And that was in the beginning anyway. For him, it was all around being able to use any equipment that you can, but it's more about your vision that you have. And if you see like his vision and what he's been able to do is just like amazing. So definitely like Prince. And in terms of like a person, or I wouldn't really say he's an artist, but like an inspiration to me is Virgil.
Yeah.
Because I find that whole thing of someone being able to, like, he's an architect, he's a DJ, he's a designer, he's designed for Mercedes-Benz, he's designed for IKEA, he's obviously became creative director of Louis Vuitton. Like, you've got your finger in so many pies. That thing we were talking about of being able to, jump into different things. And for him is all that he had like a manifesto and an ethos that he ran through everything. So no matter what he was doing, he kept that same like ethos throughout everything. And I think for me, he's been like a big inspiration, because he's kind of allowed me to see that, yeah, you don't necessarily have to stay in one lane. You can do everything in different lanes. And that's basically what
you're doing. Yeah, exactly that. Diversifying, like I said. And I know that back in 2022, you did some traveling and you did a challenge of a different country each month, so 12 countries. So how would that have played into inspiring you, your creative side? What were some of the takeaways?
So doing that was, I was just after COVID, so I was just like in that mode of definitely like working remote and like traveling as much as I can. I would never do it again, by the way.
Oh no,
I'll never do it again. Traveling is stressful,
right?
Traveling is stressful, and when you're by yourself as well, it's good because you get to know yourself and everything, but it can be lonely. And people would think that like, oh yeah, it's holiday every day, but it's not really like a holiday. Because I was still working anyway. I was just working remote. But the one takeaway that I had from that was like, it actually made me appreciate like home. Actually made me appreciate like having a home, having a community you can go back to. Because imagine every place I'm going to, I'm like the new guy. I was like, oh, who's this? Oh, this guy Chidi that he's he's traveling. He's just here for 1 month, and then he's gonna go away. Whereas you're trying to insert yourself into people with already established relationships.
Right.
The people that I met in Nairobi, they had lived there their whole lives. They had their family, everything. They already have their connections there, and I'm kind of the new guy. When I was in Lagos, when I was in Joburg, you're never really like part of the society there because essentially you're not from there, you're just a visitor.
Right, you're an unknown, aren't you?
Yeah. So it just made me appreciate having a home base, somewhere to come back to, somewhere to be like, this is where I call home.
That's interesting. I've never considered having to build up connection each time that you go to a different place. You're building up from scratch. You don't know these people, and it's quite hard to build up bonds in such a short space of time. I never considered that kind of side of it because it's always glamorous. Oh, going away, you're meeting new people, but when they don't know you, it can feel very alienating, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I think when people do all this, like, their travel blog, they don't tell you that.
They don't.
They don't tell you about like what it's really like having to, even just simple things like finding Wi-Fi. It's like you go somewhere, it's just like you go to the hotel, the Wi-Fi is not working, or you have to go and find you're new, so you have to find out all these places. It's very stressful.
It does. Again, starting from the ground up. It sounds very taxing. But so all of the places that you've been, was there one standout country you was like, oh, this is breathtaking for whatever reason, whether it's a creative reason or just a personal reason?
Yeah, the standout place, and I always say this, is Japan. Like, they're going there, just like culturally, everything is just like amazing. It was like crazy, but also just because of how it kind of spurred like a few ideas in my head. And I remember one time when I was there, I was in Kyoto, and I went to a shrine. When I was there, there was people like queuing up to get in. We were all walking slowly to go and see the shrine, everything. Like, finally get there, it was beautiful, like everything. But then when I left, I was just like, okay, I've gone to kind of like involve myself in like the culture of like the Japanese people. The history is beautiful. But I was like, wait, hold on. Like, how come we're not doing this like back home? Like, we have so much culture. If to talk about like shrines and stuff like that, we have shrines.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about different gods, we have different gods. Maybe we could even say even a deeper history, right? Even more to show, but we're not showing it. In fact, we're like, either we're running away from it or we don't even have the access to it, to be able to capitalize on it, right? Like, how have we been able to capitalize on like that side of our culture? We haven't yet. Other people are capitalizing from it, and that really just like sparked off like my mind into finding like ideas and things of how to challenge that.
And that's a beautiful segue, so we can get right into Looty Art. Like I said, when I was doing my research, it very much comes off as a movement, something that we desperately need at the moment. When you're saying, we don't have any kind of we're not highlighting, or we don't have any education around things that belongs to our culture. And I feel like Looty Art really is addressing that. And so do you want to give an intro into Looty Art, what you guys are all about?
Looty.
Yeah.
Well, I would want to ask you, like, when you first saw Looty, like, what did you think? Like, what were your first, like...
I honestly was
first impressions? Like,
It was on TikTok, and I was like, this is so cool. Just the whole way that you gone about it. And because I think it came out around the same time, the TikTok, that they were giving the artifacts, loaning the artifacts back to Ghana. So that whole story, I think the algorithm brought it up, and I was just like, this is so needed. I actually I felt like goosebumps. I was like, I want to be involved with this. This is just so good. It felt like he was the power balance, you know, he was rebalancing it in your own way. So yes, explain to the people.
So Looty, Looty was basically a project that I created, and the initial genesis of it came from a UNESCO report in 2017, I believe, where they said that 90 to 95% of all African cultural heritage, so this isn't just like actual physical art, this is cultural heritage, lives outside of Africa. 90 to 95%.
Insane.
It's mad. 90 to 95%. So when you think about like the damage that's been done, and, you know, just not being able to, firstly, just not having access to your cultural heritage is one thing. But then in this day and age that we live in, like whether we like it or not, we live in a society that it's a capitalist society. People capitalize off of their history. When you go to a country, you're, in terms of like travel and stuff, they're capitalizing on their arts, their culture, things like that. So when you look at a lot of countries who are not able to do that, but they have the richest arts, culture and heritage, it's like, it swings up all kinds of questions. And I was just like, okay, how do we tackle that? How do we balance out that 90 to 95%? So the first thing that comes into my head is just like, we just take it, right? It's like the artifacts are inside the British Museum. Why don't we just roll up there and just take it? And
I just have to caveat that with legally.
Then legally, yeah. But then once that was like, okay, we're going to actually go take it, I was like, how? What is the how? What is the how? And like initially I was just going to recreate the, like make replicas of them. Which I think anyone can do. Like you can actually, and even online, there's like the 3D versions that have been published. Anyone can do this. But I think what was very important was the whole physicality of it, and actually going into the museum, being there, and using this as like it was kind of like a performance, but also a actual heist.
Yeah.
So for anyone that's watching, like we actually went to the British Museum. Dressed in all black with masks on and robbed the British Museum.
And so just to kind of simplify that, so what you do is you go into museums, British Museum, you take a 3D scan, you then upload that as an NFT.
Exactly.
And then I know that you donate some of the money to young African artists on the continent. So that's kind of like the process of it all that you're doing. Yeah.
So that was for the first project, which was on the Benin bronzes, which was all around so originally the Benin bronzes were taken in what they call a military expedition. Basically they went there and they stole everything, burnt down the kingdom, you know, and then there's all kinds of like this, like again with the destruction becomes, you can just use your imagination of the kind of things that went on during that time after that. And now the spoils of that expedition are what's in the British Museum, but also there's over 5,000 different pieces that were taken. So these are scattered around the globe in private collections, in museums, in different institutions. But the majority is in the British Museum. So that's why it was like important for us to go there, and actually like physically be there and take these back. So, and then the reason why it was very important for this to be firstly an NFT is because I see the technology is almost like a medium, like a camera. Some people would use like, my canvas is, I'm going to do this like a water painting on, on a certain thickness of paper, or I'm going to do this on chalk, or going to use different media. I see the NFT and the tokenization of it as a medium.
Right.
Then that medium, or using that technology says something completely different than it would be if I was just doing this as a painting or something different. So the reason why it was very important for this to be an NFT is because that the token is something that is irrefutable for you to say like where it comes from. It's used as a process of provenance, like being able to say this was made on this day by this person, and you know, it's irrefutable. And we've never been able to have that before. And I just like that juxtaposition between you have the physical where we don't know. Well, we know, but but they say it's owned by the British Museum, but we all know it's not, and they've got the papers to say that it's owned by them. You have this digital one where it's like 1,000% we do know the owner, we do know, you know, where it's going to be.
We've got that lead, that footprint, so to speak.
So I wanted to use that as like a kind of like juxtaposition between the two, but then also the fact that you can add different utilities into NFT as well. And one of those utilities was that 20% of the funds goes into a separate wallet, which is then given to distribute as grants to artists based in Nigeria. And that was important because not only is there like the damage that happens having like the artifacts in the British Museum just to culturally there's a damage, but there's economics, there's an economical damage. Like there's an economical damage of you not being able to have you be in control of your and being able to capitalize on your arts, culture and history in that way. There's an economical damage. So we needed to counter that at the same time. So that's why it was like all those different layers were like important for the Benin bronzes.
I think there is a deeper conversation here, and it's definitely what you're touching on about digital colonization. So we've seen the physical side of it happening, and I think we're experiencing this digital version of it happening. And I know that Looty kind of readdresses that. But for people who maybe don't know, could you explain a little bit about what digital colonization is?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I see seep into that come from like the physical realm and can seep into the digital realm. Like you must have seen these things online about how like AI now can be racist, and how because it's something that's already exists like institutionally in the world that we live in. Then when we're building these like programs, some of these things seep in.
We use our own bias.
Exactly, that can go into there. Now there's already a issue that we have within like the physical in the arts world as well. And then when we're trying to translate that to the digital, we don't want to move some of those same biases across, right? So when we're looking at the physical artifacts, the way they're represented, who's representing them, you know, how the story's being told, are we just gonna replicate that into the digital form? It's just like, well, and my stance was just like, no, we need to create something new, something that actually references, like, it basically is coming from like an Africa first mentality, like a Pan-African mentality, that we're looking at the references of where these artifacts originally come from, and then using that to kind of inspire and move forward. So that's basically the whole like process of what like Looty does. So the installation that we created was actually inspired by the Benin bronzes, the ceremony. It's they used for commemoration.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's used as a commemoration. So we actually named the installation after that, and there's like a music that we have. So we're at the Venice Biennale last year, and if you were there, you would have heard like this music that we had created by sound designer called Aisha. Amazing like musician as well.
Brilliant. So I was going to say as well, the planning of this, it's got to take a lot of kind of insight into what you're going to do. I know you can't just kind of rock up to, or can you just rock up to the British Museum and be like, this is what we're doing? What goes through your mind on the day? What some of the challenges that you come across?
So actually before the day, I actually worked with a lawyer, a specific NFT lawyer, because I didn't want to get sued.
Right.
Like part of me did want to get sued because it's just like, if you get, you know what I mean? Like if you get sued, it's cool because it's now like, there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Oh yeah, very.
So now
true,
imagine the British Museum sues me. Everyone's going to be talking about me. So I was just like, okay, fine. I was already prepared of getting sued, but I didn't want them to give them that opportunity. So I just wanted to make sure that everything that we were doing was like legitimate. And I think it's quite like poetic because when people ask like, how did you do it without getting sued? Like, I was like, well, if you look at everything we did, what's illegal? Firstly, within the British Museum's terms and conditions, they say that you're allowed to do 3D scanning. It says it plain and clear in there.
Some nice loophole.
Yeah. That was the big like loophole. When I saw that, I was just like, wow, these people are so dumb. But obviously they did it because there's a lot of people who do like photogrammetry as a hobby, but they didn't think that there's going to be a guy like me that would just come in and... So then when you think about, okay, we were dressed in all black, there's nothing illegal about that. We wore masks. Even though the masks that we wore were quite intimidating, still there's nothing illegal about it. We were wearing masks for like how many years because of COVID? And
very true, yeah.
There's actually nothing illegal about the masks we were wearing. So,
but there's a nice story about the mask because it's the material that it's made out of.
Material is made from the Ghana musk-oat. We call it Ghana musk-oat. I don't know if what people from Ghana call it. Maybe people from Ghana, because I heard someone say that it's called Ghana must stay. And
that sounds better.
And it's there but we call them Ghana musk-oat. I'm Nigerian, so that's what.
Yeah, and the other one sounds better.
But other like they also call it the Chinatown tote. In Poland, they call that the Russian bag because a lot of back in the day, a lot of Russian refugees used to use that bag in Poland. So they call that the Russia bag. And then I know in like North Africa, they have another name for it. So, but everywhere you go, this bag is kind of like, it connotes travel.
It's like the laundry bag.
People would know when you see it's like that. It's that when you know. And then I used fiberglass and that bag to make the mask. And then we were holding the bag. Yeah. So it was basically signifying like taking something back home. You know, we're going on a travel, like we're going there physically and we're taking it back home.
Do you know, it conjures like that scene from Black Panther when Killmonger goes into the museum. That picture of you is like, yeah, we're going to blow this joint down. So I know that you did the Benin bronzes, but you also did the Rosetta Stone.
Yeah, the Rosetta Stone. That's the darling of the British Museum.
Very much so.
The centerpiece of all their stolen antiquities, and that one was really important as well because I was working with a professor from Egypt. Her name's Professor Monica Hanna, and she's the dean at one of the universities in Cairo. She's an archaeologist, and she's a hero. She's like what Indiana Jones, really. She's like the real Indiana.
She's the authentic.
Yeah, not like Indiana. Yeah, the Indiana Jones is just like some white savior.
Yeah, it's like how kind of cheeky is it to be like, this is the story, this is the protagonist, and he's going to go in there and it's a white man taking all of our stuff. Exactly. And we were really cheering on as a child, like, yes, Indiana Jones. No, Indiana Jones.
Mental brainwashing is
the mental brainwashing.
Even if you go back now and watch that film, you'd see the way that they portray like the North Africans in the film, and then the way that they portray like him as like the white savior, and go back and you'll see that this that same notion of, you know what, we are the ones who respect these artifacts, and you, even though you're from the place where these are from, you really don't deserve.
Yeah, almost like you don't have the knowledge of how powerful.
You don't understand it, and that notion is very prevalent in the film. This is why I say a lot of these things are like they're engraved within society, and it's kind of, if you don't second guess them, it just becomes normalized, and you're just like, oh yeah, Indiana Jones, yeah, fine. But yeah, it's like she's the real Indiana Jones for real. So it's a real archaeologist and Egyptologist, and we went to the British Museum, did a heist, did it again, dressed in masks, everything. And then I flew back to Egypt, met Professor Monica Hanna in Egypt. Then we drove about 5 hours to a town called Rashid. And there's a citadel in Rashid, and that's where they originally took the Rosetta Stone from. And then using a geolocated technology, I took the scan that we had and placed it right in the position where they stole it. So the geolocated technology is almost like Pokemon Go, where you can put something in a position and it will stay there digitally. So right now, that kind of marked history as the first ever digital repatriation. Like, it's actually there now, you know, yeah.
For the people who are from there can actually go and see their history as it should have been. You should feel very proud of that.
That brought me a lot of peace, that moment, because it was, it took such, like, to do the whole, like, planning, everything took such a long time. But when I was there, you could see, even just to see the difference of the area, it's like you're very everyday kind of like Egyptian town. But you could see the difference it could make if the real Rosetta Stone was there, and having like those flocks of people come and
tourism.
Yeah, the tourism. You definitely like saw that there. But yeah, definitely one of the like proudest moments for Looty was like actually doing that. And then the second part of it was to rebuild the stone. So what a lot of people don't know is that the Rosetta Stone shape that we know is actually a broken part of the stone. So there's like an original stela. So within the like AR version or the digital version, you can actually it takes you through that story, and then you can actually rebuild it. So we returned it, and then we rebuilt it at the same time. So it's just like that whole process, man. It was and then we now have like a installation to represent that whole.
I feel like you made some ancestors very happy. And I know that we had a talk off camera about the generational trauma and the violence in which some of these things have been taken, and the impact of that. And I guess we don't really think about that, but it certainly has an effect.
For real. It's like I think what I mentioned was it's just funny how the artifacts that have the most trauma attached to them are the ones that are most sought after, or the most expensive. The ones that you'll see have gone into auction and they get sold for like $1.3 million. When you then look into the history of it, there's always some kind of, war or violence or something. It's never the ones that were just kindly donated or given, or that have just passed through generations of family and things. It's always the ones that have like the violence attached to them. And that's why when I created Looty, it was very important that we switched that violent act and we did something that, when you think about the digital, you're not thinking about the same trauma and violence as the physical. When the digital story starts, it starts with two masked men go in and retrieve this. It's like the story of Robin Hood. It's the hero story. Whereas sometimes with the physical now, it's almost been like tainted. Like, imagine a child that was stolen from its family and then returned at 85 years old. It's great that you did the right thing and returned something that you stole, but that child has gone its whole life living, or the person now has gone their whole life living outside of their culture, outside of their home. They then return as something different. Their parents may be gone by then. No one really to remember them. The place that they go back to is very much different. And when you think about that same story, now you think about the artifacts that we have. Some of them have lived outside of their home for hundreds of years. So what happens when they go back? They go back to a place very different. They go back sometimes as memories of war, memories of colonialism, rather than when they left, they were, they were artifacts that were celebrated, and that's not to say they can't be celebrated anymore, but there's a change that's happened. There's a change in like the society of today than it was like a few hundred years ago. And what I wanted to do was just to leapfrog over that whole this whole colonial era and everything, and just go back to the essence and the source and leapfrog over that into the digital, so we start now with a completely new story, right?
The correct story.
Yeah, the correct story.
Our story.
Exactly. And it just, I think it opens up more options for us when it comes to, all right, it's just a new way of looking at a different angle to look at this problem and this situation.
Absolutely. So out of the Benin bronzes and the Rosetta Stones, is there anything that you have your eye on that you can share with us, or would that be giving the game away?
There's no particular like artifact like now that we've got an eye on, but this year we're actually going to open up this process to the world, and I want to democratize the process of looting. So we're going to teach people how to loot.
Yeah.
So that whole process, that whole process of like going into the museum, taking the scans, everything, we're going to open that up to everybody and teach you how to loot. We want to create a repository of like all the stolen art, and then use that to create the installations that we've done. So imagine a counter reimagination of what a museum is supposed to be,
right,
with the digital artifacts telling their true story. And we're gonna like have that as, something that can be anywhere in the world, so it's accessible to anybody. It doesn't necessarily have to be inside a museum or in an institution.
I was going to say, I guess you are creating these online museums, and it's you're redefining how we look at museums for a whole new generation. Yeah, definitely.
Because I find like these days now, like really, it's even though they're like 10 years behind when it comes to what's really going on now, and I feel that the kids of today, they're not really that interested in like that way of accessing history, that way of learning about culture and history, and we've just got like firstly a way that we think is going to be more interactive, but also like can tell the story better.
And I think children or the younger generation, they can connect more if it's a digital thing. I'm not saying that physical art or physical creation isn't a thing anymore, but I think their language is more dialed in if it exists in a digital space.
Yeah, definitely. And you can just see, even when you just see like the reaction of people when they use like the AR versions of what we're doing, or they see like the holograms and stuff, it's cool. Like there's a real like different reaction that it gets than looking at the physical. And then I'm not saying this is something that will replace the physical, but it could act as even as like a digital twin to it, that it has completely different properties, even though it's still connected.
Digital twin. That's a really great way of putting it.
Yeah.
And outside of the heist, is there any projects that's coming up for you guys that you can share with us?
Yeah, we're doing NFT Paris in like 2 weeks, and Art Dubai later this year. Fingers crossed, we'll be doing the Dakar Biennale in Senegal, and Art Basel, Miami. This is still
very nice, yeah.
Basel, and Art X Lagos. Those are what we've got coming next this year.
Sounds like you're going to be a very busy man this year.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of fun things.
Incredible. And so I think I'd like to close with values. I always like to ask our guests what's the value that they hold for their personal life and a value that they hold for their professional life. If you want to start with your personal life?
Personal life, I actually can't remember now. So what was my value? My personal life value.
I think off camera you mentioned outside the box.
Okay.
Outside the box, yeah.
Personal life value is thinking outside the box. Yeah, in terms of, I guess that's more in terms of like creativity. It's just like I try not to let like an idea die. I would take it, keep asking like why until even if it seems like a bit crazy, keep asking that question of why till you get down to the very core of it, and then like move forward with that.
And for your professional life?
And professional life is definitely never give up. Like never stop going and having that. I think you need to trust yourself a lot, you know, have a lot of trust in yourself and your ability, because the second that you lose like your passion and stuff, that's like the fuel almost to keep going, is having that. So just always have that trust in your ability and keep going.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And if people want to follow your journey, where can they find you?
You can follow me on Instagram is chidi.co. My website is chidi.co. Everything's chidi.co.
Yeah, and Looty, can they find you?
And for Looty, it's in Instagram, it's at Looty NFT. And then the website is www.looty.art.
Amazing. Chidi, thank you. I was really looking forward to this conversation. You did not disappoint. And I would love to revisit when you've got some of the other projects going off this year. But yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see you looting like later this year.
Yes, we need to talk about that, because I'm definitely in, by the way. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. And also, if you want to follow The Black Circle, you can find us on Instagram at theblackcircle.podcast. And you can find us on YouTube, The Black Circle Podcast. Until next time.